move on to our next speaker, Mr. Suhail KK. Mr. Suhail KK is the director of the Quill Foundation, an organization that, very broadly speaking, deals with issues pertaining to human rights and justice among the underprivileged in India. I shall now request Mr. Suhail to share his thoughts and insights on the issues and challenges in the path of addressing the everyday injustices suffered by Dalits and minority communities in India today. Mr. Suhail, could you please take over?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Respected Lieutenant General Zamiruddin Shah Sahab, Ram Punyani Sahab, Soumitra Dastidarji, IQAC, organizers of the Dewan Abdul Gani College. I'm really privileged to be part of this seminar. The topic of today's program is issues of minorities and Dalits in contemporary India. I would like to change the issue, the topic itself, because it's not about the issues of minorities. Whatever we have been speaking about was about the contemporary issues that the country is facing. These problems which the weaker sections are facing is not because of their primarily their problem, it is because of the country itself. As Ram Punyani ji has rightly mentioned, the reason being weakening of the constitutional values itself. So when there is no equality, when there is no sense of liberty, fraternity and justice within the society, the people in the country, especially the weaker sections, tend to face problems of targeted violence. They tend to face the problems of discrimination, political marginalization, and so on. So what we find in India is, since the last, especially since the last 7 years, is a complete communalization of the country, where each and every single thing, be it coronavirus, which the entire country is facing, even a problem like this has been converted into a communal issue. It has been converted into an issue of hate. So when we say that the problem within the society, especially within the Muslims and the Dalits, the marginalized sections, as rightly mentioned by Zamiruddin Shah Sahab and Ram Punyani ji earlier, is about social, economic and political discrimination of Muslims and the Dalits. Zamiruddin Shah Sahab has focused on the political disempowerment and also the conspiracy angle behind it, how delimitation has been brought in to completely marginalize the community. And also the communalization of the society itself. So targeted violence, communal violence, state violence especially. You can also see something that has not been mentioned was about the issue of security, to have special security legislations. You know, recently there have been a lot of security legislations which happened, especially in the name of curbing terrorism. What you find is the topics like the laws like Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, which was amended 5 times now to make it a special law to curb so-called terrorism. So if you go into the law, what you can find is this law is not only related to it's not only charged against the so-called terrorists. It is actually charged against whoever has political dissent towards the ruling party and its alliance. What you can find is those peaceful protests which happened in the last few months against Citizenship Amendment Act and the national citizens and the upcoming National Register of Citizens. These people are completely non-violent. There was not even a single act of violence that these people have taken. Even the prosecution doesn't have that argument. These people have been charged with Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, UAPA, in which it is clearly mentioned that whoever does any act with the intent to threaten or likely to threaten the unity, integrity, security, and sovereignty of this country. So when you go into the law, Citizenship Amendment Act and the NRC and the NPR combined, what you can find is it threatens the unity, integrity, and security and sovereignty of this country. And this law is being brought up by the ruling party but the UAP is not charged against the party and the rulers. It is charged against those people who protest peacefully against the law, against this dividing law. So this is the real problem that the community and the society is facing. So in this law, it is mentioned, it is said that whoever does any act with the intent, so intention is the real problem, intent. So intention is a thing that cannot be found out in the laboratory, which cannot be searched, or which cannot be caught with evidence, saying that, see, these people have the intention. So intention clause is the most dangerous part of this anti-terror, the so-called anti-terror law. When you go into the, because those people who have been named who are not Muslim names, even in the unlawful, even in the Citizenship Amendment Act protests, those people who have been arrested for protesting and who have been not Muslims, they are not charged with UAPA. Only Muslims are charged with UAPA because they have the intention of so-called threatening the integrity, security, and sovereignty of this country. So what is the real problem? Actually, we are facing two viruses. One is the COVID-19 virus, and number two is the political Hindutva and the hate it manufactures, the hate virus. So we have, the humanity has prevailed over all the viruses before. Like, for instance, you have the plague of Justinian. The 100 million people have been killed, or they died because of this virus. The Black Death, 1346, it happened in the mid-14th century. 200 million people have died. This number is something that can be, because you know, at that time, more than 2/3 of the global population have disappeared because of this virus. This is what is mentioned in the history. But this is at a time when we had no social media. It's a time when there is no organized documentation by state. There is no state as such. So this number is itself maybe very less. It must be far more than 200 million the deaths that happened due to Black Death. You have bubonic plague, which happened in repeating in centuries. So actually, these viruses have been wiped out from the earth. What prevailed is humans. Humans prevailed. Humanity prevailed over the virus. So in the same way, I would say that hate that we see in this country and the hate mongers will disappear. They are bound to perish. They are destined to perish. We know the early 20th century hate groups like the Nazi party, the Hitler, they were against the Jews. They said they tried to unite the entire population by saying, by creating manufacturing hate against the Jews. But what happened was, after 1945, the Hitler and Nazi party was wiped out. What prevailed was Jews. Jews lived happily thereafter. So hate is destined and is bound to perish. It will never exist. And what the problem is, when hate starts to prevail or starts to creep into the society has a downfall. The society will have economic and social deprivation. What we have seen from 2014 to 2019 is that vast number of companies, huge companies, have been collapsing. They have been bankrupt. You know, Jet Airways, for instance, or Arcom, for that matter, Alok Industries and Parle-G and whatnot. There are hundreds of companies which had filed bankruptcy from 2014 to 2019. So what we are seeing is a steady increase of hate in the country and a steady decline of economic and the economic affairs of this country. So we are weakening in terms of as an economic power. So this is what actually what happens. This is what we see in the Second World War and the time of First World War. We have seen the Great Depression. We have seen the Great Depression even in 2007, when global war on terror was at its rise, and Islamophobia was also in its rise. Hate was all across the world, which has been spread by the neoconservatives, led by the Republican Party, George Bush, Paul Wolfowitz, and Condoleezza Rice, and people and the entire alliance. So when hate starts to grow, always there is an economic depression, there is always an economic downfall for a country and the world itself. So what is a solution is a real question. We all know what is a problem. We know what is the real issues. We need not go into the issues in detail. So I would say that the issue cannot be solved by an angry mob. I think this was also, this word angry mob was used by Zamir Shah Sahab also, that an angry mob cannot solve the problem. We cannot keep on crying, saying that we have such and such problems. Mere reiterating of the problem itself cannot be the solution also. So what we have to do is we have to create a creative minority. A creative minority should be built, which is, how do we define creative minority? These are the people who has always changed the course of history. For instance, in India, when India was ruled by the Britishers for a long time, the Indians, those people who have been leading the freedom struggle, were not an angry mob. They were a creative minority. Gandhi, Abul Kalam Azad, these people like them, who were completely calm, very quiet. The people who led the movement in South Africa, Nelson Mandela, against apartheid, the European Reformation movement in the 16th century, Martin Luther, who wrote the 95 Theses, not the Martin Luther King of the junior, the 1517 Martin Luther. So these people are the creative minority. These are the people who have changed the course of history. What we have to do is, we cannot fight on the terms of these hate mongers. We cannot fight on their terms. In the book of Samuel of Bible, Old Testament, you can see a history of Goliath and David, the war between Goliath and David. You can find Goliath on one side and David on the other side. Goliath was all powerful. He was destined to win by all the material things. He had weapons, he had shields, metal shields, he had everything. Because by all material means, Goliath and his team is going to win. And the David and his team was destined to fail. They are underdogs. That is what everyone thought. They started to gradually tell them, lure them, instigate them to come and fight. But they were not confident enough. But after a long time of wait, what happened was, you can see that David, a foot soldier, he just climbed down the valley and said that I would like to fight against Goliath. So everyone was laughing. Who this person is going to fight against Goliath? This is a small boy with no arms in his hands. So what he did was, he just sat on the floor and then took his sling from his waist and then took a small stone and then started to rotate the stone with the sling. The Goliath was actually inviting him to fight for a sport fight, a combat, one single combat, and that will decide the destiny of both the communities. What David did was, he was not ready to go by the rules of Goliath. He actually turned the table on his favor. And what happened was, in a matter of a second, in a fraction of a second, David won who was actually labeled as an underdog, won the war. This was what happened in the David versus Goliath in the Bible, Old Testament. This is what happens in the wars between corporates. This is what happens in imperial struggles. This is what happens across the history. But before the so-called powerful team declines, what happens is, they become hollow from the inside. the so-called powerful entity becomes completely hollow from the inside. We may feel it like a big tree, but it is a hollow tree. The people who comes to question this particular authority actually is not so powerful, so to say, against when we compare with the so-called powerful you have the entity. What they do is they give a small gentle push to this hollow, completely hollow tree, and then the tree tends to fall. So this is what happens. This is what happened to the Greek Empire, and what happens is this is the same thing which happened to the British Empire, the biggest ever empire that humanity has ever seen. It ruled more than 25% of the world of the land area of the world. So these, how did they go? How did they? How were they wiped out? Actually, they became completely hollow, and also because of the reason that they are overconfident. They were overconfident. So overconfidence is number two, the major reason of their setback. So of their downfall. So I would like to say, what we as people who believes in Constitution and its values, equality, liberty, fraternity, and justice, is that we should be patient, we should be organized together to form one single. I would like to mention a 21st century survival kit in front of this audience, especially for the Muslim community, is that there are two approaches or two major heads under which we need to act. Number one is mind making and training of the community. I'll briefly elaborate in 5 points what is mind making and training. And number two is the projects. So what is mind making and training? One is unity and alliance. So as a community, they need to be formed as one single entity, and also they need to ally with the entire community of this country, the citizenship of this country, who believes in equality, liberty, fraternity, and justice. It's not a timely strategic alliance. It is actually a natural alliance where people tends to unite together for the cause of nation building. They become one entity in order to several people are engaged in the same activities, and then they unite as one single entity. So there should be efficacy of collectivism. There should be what we say to have all kinds of coordination between them. Number two is remove defensive attitude and minority mindset. Muslims need to remove this. They have always to have minority has prevailed. It's not like in numbers, if you are more, you tend to prevail. No, numbers is myth. It's always the minority, the quality minority, which actually prevails. So what you have to do is just take out this defensive attitude from our minds. Number three is eradicate fear and instill confidence within the community. Number four is use democratic institutions like the court, the constitutional institutions, the democratic institutions within our country, including the panchayat, the parliament, the legislative assembly, and everything that you have, the police, the human rights mechanisms, National Human Rights Commission, the State Human Rights Commission. Train them to use these institutions in the most effective ways. Number five is engagement with all the other communities, genuine engagement. Religious groups should engage between. Engagement is the lifeblood of the brotherhood, is the lifeblood of national unity. So there have been reasons pertaining to history which pushes us towards disengagement, and disengagement has always been the policy of the communal powers that we have mentioned earlier, that we should not engage between other communities. They try to build blocks between communities. So engagement should be the policy of the Muslim community and the Dalit communities and the marginalized sections. This is what I meant by the mind making and training part. And number two is the projects, which includes 5 points. Number one is education and human resource development, educational empowerment. Number two is about learning, unlearning, and relearning the religion itself. So Muslim community need to learn, unlearn, and relearn the religion itself. Try to relearn the texts in contexts. Number 3 is documentation, research, and advocacy. Policy research should be part of the community activism. Number 4 is propaganda, or the proper use of social media and OTT networks and media, satellite media, to create this sense of constitutionalism, or this sense of constitutional values of equality, liberty, fraternity, and justice. And number 5 is political empowerment. So Muslim community can never actually strengthen themselves without doing these 10 points, as I just mentioned, which can be stated as the 21st century survival kit. So what constitutes hate within India? I would say that these 5 points actually constitutes hate in India, and this has to be dealt by by whoever believes in secularism. Number 1 is that there has been a tremendous hate towards Muslims, and the genealogy or the constituents of this hate is, number 1, that Muslims are anti-Hindu. They believe that they are anti-Hindu. Number 2 is they try to manufacture this hate by saying that Islam is inherently violent, and they said that Islam is terrorism, Mughal history, as Ram Punyani Sahab clearly mentioned, and all these things which actually created a sense that Muslims are basically inherently violent. Number 3 is the notion that Muslims are traitors. They don't love this country. They don't recite Vande Mataram. They support Pakistan even in cricket matches and so on. So it is basically the labeling as traitors. And number 4 is population anxiety, that Muslims population is increasing in a high pace, that they are going to overtake the Hindu community, and so we need to act, which includes love jihad, which includes the propaganda of mandatory population control and population act, and so on. So, and number 5 is personal negative experiences. So these are the 5 elements that actually creates hate against Muslims in India. This actually, I came into this conclusion after observing for 2 years the internal the hate mongering Facebook pages and groups in the social media. So I would like to say that this hate will for sure will deteriorate, or it will come down. It will not prevail forever. But as people as people who believes in the constitutional values, it's time for us to come up and then voice ourselves. Silence is the most dangerous thing to destroy. Actually, silence is something which will ruin this country. Those people who believe in these values need to speak up and need to join the struggle, peaceful struggle, to preserve the constitution and its values. I would end my talk by congratulating the organizers of this meeting, and also congratulate all the previous speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Suhail. That was a very informative and an engaging speech. Thank you very much.